All right. We are in chapter 13 this week, and yes, she does. We're in Revelation 13, and we're going to talk about two beasts today, and it's going to be kind of to be real honest with you, there's a lot of stuff on this chapter, a lot of different points of view, and there's a lot of theories and theologies as to what's going on here. So I'll cover as much as I can, but just realize that there is more here than what you're going to get in this class today, and you need to do research if you want to know a little deeper about it. I just can't cover everything in an hour. So anyway, we're going to be talking about the two beasts, and I just want you to know that this is not one of the beasts that we're going to be talking about.
What a cutie.
This is a this is a blobfish, and they live in the bottom of the ocean. They eat, I guess, the junk off the floor of the ocean. And that's exactly what they look like. It looks like an old man. And I just looked at that, so that's got to be fake, and it's not.
Old Papa.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like his dad, doesn't it? So, but when we talk about a beast today, we're not going to be talking about like a dog or a cat or a cow or anything like that. The beast we're going to talk about today is going to be a monster in the truest sense of the word. Okay, and what we're going to end up seeing here as we go through this is that we have what we call the Holy Trinity, but now we're going to see the unholy Trinity revealed today. And once again, Satan's going to show himself not to be very clever. Okay, he's just a copycat. Can't come up with anything on his own. So the beast from the sea. And one of the things we need to talk about first of all, before we go into this, is a little bit more on the symbolism that we see in prophecy. When we look at prophecy, we'll see terms like sea, beast, wings, heads, and horns. And we've already seen some of that stuff in Revelation already. You see it in Ezekiel, you see it in Isaiah, you see it in Zechariah. It's used a lot of times to symbolize specific things. When in a prophecy, when we talk about the sea, that represents people, multitude, nations, and tongues. So it's basically the whole world. You know, sea of people. We use that term quite a bit. A beast represents kingdoms or political powers. Wings represent swiftness of movement. So last week when we talked about the woman going on the eagle's wings into the desert, that meant basically they were going to be moving quickly. It wasn't going to take a long time to get there. It was going to be a quick movement, swift. Heads represent divisions or branches of government, and horns represent kingdoms, kings, or political power arising out of being part of another power. And horns also represent power. I mean, that's obviously the political power. And when we looked at the, I think it's in the, I want to say he said the Vatican, the statue of Moses. Moses has two horns. Have y'all ever seen that? The statue with Moses with two horns? I think I may have many moons ago. But the idea here is, as a kid, I just thought, why are they making him look like Satan? That doesn't make any sense. Well, horns represented power. So they were just showing it was either Michelangelo or I think it was Michelangelo who did it. It was just showing the power that Moses had. He represented it with the two horns. So that's kind of what we see as we go through Revelations and other prophetic scriptures, those items being used to show those things. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we kind of go through. All right. So verse 1. And the dragon stood on the sand of the seashore. Then I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 crowns, and on his heads were blasphemous names. All right, so we have another beast. Last week we had the red dragon, right? And who did the red dragon represent? Satan. Okay. Now we have the second beast, and this is the sea beast. All right. And he has 10 horns and 7 heads. So he has 7 heads with 10 horns. Okay. And if you recall the description of the red dragon, these two are very similar in their descriptions. Okay. And then there's crowns on those horns too. Okay. When we talked about the horns last week, they were diadems, which showed power, right? And then this week, these horns show are diadems as well, kind of represent their power, their authority that they're going to have. When we back up for a second, we want to keep in mind here that you may not remember this or not, but if you remember, we had that angel of the Lord that came down and straddled the sea and the land. Remember that vaguely? Okay? And so what that representing was, that was representing God taking control back. Okay, so it was the land and the sea. So up until this point, Satan had control of the land and the sea. And so the two beasts that we're going to see today have to do with the land and the sea. And it's kind of back to this, and Satan's going to be basically saying, we'll see about that. Not necessarily. Okay? So, this table here is one thought as to what these 7 beasts represent. If the 7 heads represent branches of government, then you're going to have these kingdoms that were throughout history, 7 kingdoms. This matches up with what's in Daniel. Okay? Now this person says that the 7th is the Anglo-Americans. I don't buy that, but that's their point of view. And again, I'm just showing you some of the possibilities, some of the interpretations that are out there. And the reason that they've made this chart is because when it talks about the blasphemous names, they believe it's because they claim divine backing. If you look at all of these civilizations, they all tied back to some form of deity that they worshipped as part of their kingdoms. Okay? All right, so so we've got 10 horns, and if we try to figure out what those 10 horns are, what's the common? Does anybody know what the common theory is to what the 10 horns represent?
Would it be
the European Union?
Yeah, the common is the European Union. Okay, and that's fine because they did begin with 10, but now there's 28 countries in there.
Would they match the 10 toes in the image in Daniel?
Yes, they do.
So then it's probably 10 terrorist organizations, because they have power but no dominion. Terrorist organizations don't have boundaries like nations.
Yeah, and that's what Tom Bradford thinks too, is that instead of being this, because see, this is tied into the theory that Rome is going to be the seat of this Antichrist power, the Vatican, the Pope. And so why would this be, in our world, in our religious world, why would this be the one that they would go with? Because we're Protestants and they're Catholics, okay? And throughout most of my experience growing up, these were the bad guys. The Catholics were the bad guys. So the European theater would be brought up. I'm sorry, just they would have, that Roman Empire would have been that particular area that they covered. So that's one theory, and it doesn't really hold a whole lot of water. Now that doesn't mean that they couldn't get down, lose 18 countries and get back down to 10. But Bradford brings up a different possibility, and that's what this is all about here. If we look in, I'm gonna trip over that. If we look in Psalm 83, it's up here if you can read it. If you can't, you can look it up. It says, God, do not remain quiet, do not be silent, and God, do not be still. For behold, your enemies make an uproar, and those who hate you have exalted themselves. They make shrewd plans against your people and conspire together against your treasured ones. They have said, come, and let's wipe them out as a nation, so that the name of Israel will no longer be remembered. For they have conspired together with one mind. They make a covenant against you, the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria has also joined them. They have become a help to the children of Lot. So if we look at that, there are 10 nations that are listed there. And those 10 nations, if you plot them, surround Israel. What religion do you think is in those 10 nations right now? What's the predominant? Muslim, okay, Islam. So his theory is that it could very well be that Islam is going to be this 10-headed monster. That their whole purpose is to destroy Israel, and it would make more sense with them being that way around, around them, surrounding them, and terrorism is a part of their philosophy, part of their culture, and that they actually have a system that is both religious and political. These are not separate. Okay, they're one and the same. Okay, and then again, if we look, we can see that in the table of nations, these nations are also listed. And if we look in the Old Testament, which again is always very important to do with this stuff, Philistia or Philistia is mentioned quite a bit. The Philistines are mentioned quite a bit in the Old Testament prophecies. They're going to be part of it. This word Philistine comes from the Greek word, my mind just went blank. Palestine comes from Philistia. And we know how much Palestine is all part of what's going on right now. So that gives further kind of credence to this idea that if Philistia is going to be involved in the end time prophecies that we see in the Old Testament, that this may be very well what is going to happen. Okay, now again, that's just one theory. We've already had 2 theories about what this is about, and there's a lot more out there. Okay, any questions on that?
Yeah, I just have one about the Philistines.
Yes.
I have heard that there really wasn't, the Palestine area is really not the descendants of the Philistines, it's more Arab people that got moved in.
Right. Yeah, my understanding, that was my understanding too, and then Bradford feels like the majority of people living in what's now Palestine do have a genetic connection with the Philistines, but that's not to say that they're pure.
Right.
There's other stuff, there's other mixed in there, but that he believes that they do have a line of heritage with the Philistines. Okay, and interesting side note: the Philistines and the Egyptians apparently came from the same, or from the same family. So there's a connection there as well. All right, you're going through all the family, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am.
Okay. All right. So verse 2. We're making great progress here. Verse 2. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, and his feet were like those of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. and the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. All right, so we've seen this before, but not in this necessarily in this form. If we go back to Daniel 7, we see these as individual beasts. They're mentioned as individual beasts. And so we've got the leopard, we've got the bear, the lion, and then some, we don't know what this creature is. In Daniel, it's like a horrendous creature, whatever it might be. And so each one of these represents a different characteristic of an ancient empire. All right. So when we look at the lion, we see Babylon. If you look at all the ruins of Babylon, you'll see this, which is very kind of interesting, this lion that has wings all over the place. Even in the, y'all know that the, what's his face? The, what was his name? The leader that got hung.
Saddam Hussein.
Hussein. Yes, Hussein. He was rebuilding the Tower of Babel, or the city of Babylon. And all along there, you see the frescoes of the lions. It was originally, the Babel was believed to be just a Bible story. And then a German archaeologist discovered the ruins. So guess where the ruins are? In Germany. They actually have a Babylon museum. Yeah. And it's massive, obviously. But you can see all these lions with the wings lining the causeways, okay? So that represents them. The bear represents, oh boy, represents the Medo-Persians, which is not necessarily one we talk about very much. The Medo-Persians conquered Babylon, and their form of conquering was just to come through and just destroy and conquer. They didn't come in, they weren't warm and friendly and say, hey, come on, be part of us. They just destroyed everything. And then the leopard is Greece. The key characteristic of the leopard is swiftness. And when you look at the empire of Alexander the Great, which is who this is pointing to, he conquered the world, the known world. I mean, obviously there was more to it, but you know what I'm saying, in 3 years, which is pretty amazing considering the times and how long it took to travel places, okay? So we see all those animals in this one creature. You see the paws of the bear, the body of the leopard, the mouth of the lion, and you got all the heads and the horns and crowns. All right. Now the question is, where does this creature get its power from and its authority from? It gets it from the dragon, right? That's what it says right here. And the dragon gave him his power. So the dragon is empowering this guy to do all the things that he's able to do, and he gets the power of the throne and the great authority from Satan. Okay. And then there's the picture of the beast from Daniel 7. All right. Verse 3, I saw one of his heads as if it had been fatally wounded, and his fatal wound was healed, and the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. So we don't know if it's the lion's head or whatever, but that's just a picture. One of the heads receives a fatal wound. And most likely, I mean, it's going to be the seventh one, the last one, is going to be the one that's got the fatal wound because it fits in with the end times period. Okay? Now, what does it mean when it's fatal?
Dead.
I was going to ask him, the forensic teacher, but it's okay.
It's dead.
Yeah, thank you. He receives a fatal wound to the head. And this has caused a lot of discussion as well. Because this has another aspect to it. But here's a question as to, okay, who's this seventh head? Who does that represent? And when we read this, it says that the wound was healed and the world was amazed. What?
It's like the story of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the same thing, but it's.
I mean,
Satan's
yes,
version.
exactly. The idea here is that if Jesus can rise from the dead, so can Satan's Christ. Okay, so that's on the spiritual end of it. That's what's going on here. Is that this is the Antichrist, and so the Antichrist is supposed to mimic Christ himself. Now, if I were to ask you what this means, what would you say? What does Antichrist mean? Against Christ. But what's interesting here is that if you look up the word, look up this right here, it can also mean instead of. And that almost really kind of fits, maybe a little bit better, is that what Satan's trying to do is replace worship of Christ with worship of the Antichrist. So it's instead of Christ, okay? And you realize that there have been many Antichrists throughout history. And everybody can probably name one right now at the top of their head. Right? Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Stalin. Napoleon. I'm sure there's many more. What? There is a lot more. Throughout history, there have been many antichrists, and it's really almost any Roman emperor could be considered an antichrist, because if you consider this to be instead of, one of the religion of the Roman emperors was, I'm a god, so you need to worship me. So that would be placing him in position where Christ would be for us, right? Okay, so there have been a lot of antichrists, but this is the Antichrist. This is the one that Satan's been waiting to bring forth, okay? And what was it that triggered this guy coming forth? Okay, all the way back to last week. What happened to Satan? He got cast out of heaven. What does that tell him?
The end is near.
The end is near. Who has the deed to earth now?
Christ.
Christ does. So Satan knows the time is near, and he's got one last shot in his mind of taking control of this. That's what precipitates everything we're reading now. He's been really waiting for this moment, for that moment, not this moment, that moment to take control, to bring the Antichrist to the world. And to be honest with you, that was my Nigerian. My opinion is that it's not so much about a last-ditch effort to unseat God. It's that if I'm going down, I'm taking a lot of people with me. That's my feeling, is that he's hated man ever since Adam was created. Because in his eyes, man took his place. And everything that's happened through history has been him trying to destroy man and take man away from God. So that's what I think. I think is going on here is
Nothing. I'll tell you my opinion later.
okay. So anyway, not that the other one's not part of it too, but I think that this is definitely a part of him trying to defeat God, is to take as many people away from God as possible. Okay. So another possible idea that's out there, and this is, I hope I'm doing him justice, because I would hate for it not to be. There's a guy named Ron Skiba, I think I've told you about him before. And he does a lot of research on this kind of thing. He believes that if you go through the six heads, that he can come up with 6 potential world leaders throughout history that would fit those 6. Okay, I'm not going to go through the list. But he says, who's the 7th one? And he goes back to this. He goes back to the head wound. And then there's some stuff later on that we'll cover as well. He believes that it's actually Nimrod who's going to come back. Now, Nimrod is kind of a resurrection religion. You know, he was cut all to pieces, and he had a mortal head wound. They cut him up into 14 pieces. Could only find 13 of them, which is why 13 is supposedly very important to the occultists. But that's his theory, is that this is really Nimrod coming back. Now, again, you'll have to listen to what he has and how he does it and how he talks about it. The one issue I have with Ron is that in his defense, all he uses is New Testament scripture. And I think that when you do that, you got a danger, because this is the end of the book, and you need to include the first 2/3 of it as well. Okay? So you've got the Pope as a possibility. You've got Nimrod as a possibility. You have, what else did I say? That's it? That's all I said?
So far.
That's all I said? Oh, then there's the idea that it's a Muslim, it's an Islam, someone who pretending to be Jew, someone who's pretending to be a Jew but isn't. Partly that connection back with the Muslim tribes. All right? Verse 4, they worship the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who is able to wage war with him? So basically what John's saying there is that when they worshiped the beast, they were actually worshiping the dragon. Kind of like when we worship Jesus, we're also worshiping God as well. So there's this connection here that the beast is drawing people to the dragon. This phrase in here, who is like the beast, I totally missed this. I'm sure you all caught it. Right. Way to go. Yeah, make me look stupid. No. If you remember, who was it that defeated Satan? It was Michael, the archangel, right? And what does Michael mean? What does Michael mean?
Who is like God?
Thank you. Who is like God? Okay. So this is kind of Satan's dig at that, and the people are saying it, but they're saying it about the beast, not about Michael. Okay. Verse 5, a mouth was given to him, speaking arrogant words and blasphemies. And authority to act for 42 months was given to him. And he opened his mouth in blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. So this guy does a lot of blaspheming against God and against the saints that are in heaven. All right, so at this point, the rapture has already occurred, or the saints wouldn't be in heaven, right? And how long is he going to be in control?
3.5 years.
3.5 years, 42 months. Okay? So the beast the Antichrist is given this control for that length of time. And he will, in the earth, the world dwellers will be drawn to it. Verse 7, it was also given him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given to him over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All right, so wait, it says that he was given, he was able to make war against the saints. Well, if there's saints in heaven, who is he making war against?
Tribulation
Yeah.
conference.
Yeah, right, the ones who accept Christ during the tribulation, okay? And what's interesting about this is when you look at all of the other civilizations that were world conquerors, they were world conquerors in their area. they didn't really control the whole world. And what's going to happen is, with the Antichrist, is that he is going to have authority over the entire world. Everybody is going to be under his authority. All who live on the earth will worship him. Now, realize that in the Bible, when they use the word all, it doesn't mean 100%. It just means a lot of people will worship him. Everyone whose name has not been written since the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slaughtered. Okay, so what John's saying here is that those who will be drawn to worship the Antichrist are those whose name's not written in the book of life of the Lamb. Okay, they're not believers. So, will there be Christians that will worship the beast, the Antichrist? Yeah, there will. There will. And we can go back to when Jesus said that there'll be people that come before him, and his response will be, I don't know you. I don't know who you are. This is going to be a critical time for believers. And a couple of coming up, we'll see what this means. But it's going to be very easy, and understand that the Antichrist is going to create a situation where you're going to have to make a decision one way or the other on your faith. So if you don't accept Christ, you live, but you die, eternal death. And so anyone who hasn't accepted the Antichrist will be slaughtered. And so that means that you're going to have to be obedient. It's going to be very easy to say, to not be obedient in those situations. So there will be a lot of what may have been, peripheral Christians who are on the side, but now that the thing starts getting hot, they were never truly believers. Okay? All right, verse 9. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. If anyone kills with the sword he must be killed. Here's the perseverance and the faith of the saints. So the way that they become saved and survive is through their perseverance and their faith. It's their obedience. And the obedience is going to be evident in how they're treated by the Antichrist. Now, if anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. Mark Carell believes that what that is saying is that there will be no innocent people. You remember the Nuremberg trials? And what was the basic argument of the Germans during the Nuremberg trials? I was just following orders.
I was just a soldier.
Yeah, I was just a soldier. I was just following orders. And Mark Carell believes that what this verse is saying here is that you won't be able to use that excuse. That you'll be held responsible for what you do and you don't do. Okay? All right. Any questions on the Antichrist?
At the beginning where it's saying he came out of the sea,
Mm-hmm.
and you were giving us that at the beginning of the sea could represent many peoples or nations.
Yes.
You think that might be a reference to maybe the United Nations?
And that's been one of the ones that's been battered around, the United Nations. Most likely not, and the reason is that if we go back to, I've forgotten it. I have a Mac. They don't do touch. If you look in verse 7, it says, "It was also given to him." So we're talking about an individual, not an entity. And so most likely it's not going to be something like the United Nations. It could be there. I mean, certainly the Antichrist would.
The United Nations represents the water. And
Oh. Well,
out of the...
It could. I think that it's just a symbol here of mankind. So I guess you could say that potentially the United Nations does represent the world. So it's possible. possible. Okay? Anybody else? No? All right, so the next beast is the one that comes from the earth.
Verse 11.
Yeah. Where'd it go? There we go. That's too far. Okay. There we go. I almost failed to use the arrow buttons. All right, verse 11. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. All right, so now we've got a third beast, and he looks like a lamb and has 2 horns. Okay? But he speaks like the dragon. Okay? So it's not going to be your cute, cuddly little lamb. All right? And the reason that he has 2 horns, there's 2 explanations why it has 2 horns. One is that because lambs have 2 horns. The other could be the fact that this represents that number 2 is a number of witnesses that that God requires for something to be true. And so the 2 horns would represent that this idea that he's bearing witness to what's going on. Okay? But again, it could be nothing more than he's a lamb, so he has 2 horns because he's a lamb. But he's going to be speaking as the dragon. So again, Satan's going to be speaking through this guy. Verse 12, he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who live in it worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. All right, so what we've got here is we've got the third beast, and so he exercised authority of the first beast. So again, the dragon is giving him his power to speak, giving him his authority. And what he does is he leads the world into worship. So the sea beast, this is the land beast. So the sea beast is a political power, and the land beast is going to be a religious power. All right, and his function is to draw worship to the first beast, who is this one whose head was fatally wounded. Okay? Bert, you got a question? No. Okay. All right. Verse 13. Yes.
I keep thinking that Satan mimics God all the time, and I'm looking for John in this picture somewhere, because John came right before Christ, kind of paved the way. And I'm wondering if that lamb character fits that somebody comes right before and paves the way for the Antichrist. It's just a thought.
Yeah, it's possible, and I guess the question would be in that, are these listed in chronological order? Are these things occurring in chronological order? If they are, then he probably doesn't fit John the Baptist because he comes after the Antichrist. The Antichrist already has authority, over the political authority over the world. And so what the land beast does is leads people to worship him. So they're making more of a religious / political government as opposed to just a political government. Okay? So really, I think most, I'm not saying that's not what you said is not possible. Most of the people I read said this represents the Holy Spirit. Okay? So you've got this unholy trinity now that has the dragon, the sea beast, and then the land beast. Okay, so you got Satan, the Antichrist, and then the false prophet. All right, the land beast would be the false prophet in this case here. So I guess in a sense there could be an aspect of him as John the Baptist in the sense that he's leading people to worship the Antichrist.
I think that fits in there somewhere, I'm just not sure where.
It may, and that's I did come across that. It doesn't mean it's not a possibility, though. That doesn't mean it's not a possibility. Okay. So what does this guy do? He performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down out of the sky to the earth in the presence of the people. Okay. So what's happening here is that this guy does great signs. All right. Signs are associated with religion, right? Not politics. And what's the one big thing he does that they talk
Fire.
about? The fire. What else is going on at this time on earth?
We got the seal, or was it the trumpet judgments where they fire from heaven's coming down and
Well, yeah, now that stuff happened before, but what's happening right here at this time is the two witnesses. What was the thing the two witnesses could do?
call
Bring
fire?
fire.
Bring fire down from heaven. Okay? So if the witnesses are already doing it, why is Satan having the false prophet do it? Mimicking. He's going to do it to minimize.
Better.
What?
He can do it better.
He can do it better, or he can do the same thing. That's no big deal. Look, I can do the same thing. Where did we hear that before? Yes. Aaron, Moses, and the magicians. Aaron would do something, the magicians go, we can do that. And they did it. The whole purpose being that they can minimize these great wonders that are coming from God. Okay? And so people, because they're going to be able to say, look, these guys, there's nothing special about them. We can do this as well. The attempt here is to minimize who they are. Okay? All right, verse 14. And he deceives those who live on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who live on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. So once he gets the attention of the world by doing these same signs the two witnesses do, now he's going to lead the world to worship the Antichrist. Okay? And they're going to make an image of him. And remember that one of the big things, this is the biggest sign necessarily, it's the Antichrist reanimated. Because the wound was fatal. I mean, he's dead. Well, if he's dead, then there's no reason for the false prophet to be pushing people to worship him.
That's, yeah.
Right?
Makes sense.
So they've got to prove that this guy is just as good as Christ, and so he has to come back. He's got to be reanimated. All right? And then when that happens, people will begin to worship him because of that. And verse 15, and it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak and cause all who do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So this image is created, and we don't know if the image is actually the Antichrist brought back to life through the power of Satan, or could it be Disney animatronics? I mean, $6 million man. You know, they get this artificial intelligence so advanced that they could have something look like and be the Antichrist, so people will say, oh, he's come back to life. Don't know. I mean, the way science is moving this quick, the way it's moving so fast, geometric proportions, it's possible.
I'm wondering too about genetic manipulation.
Cloning.
Cloning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they're already tagging, and they're getting these different genomes from these different areas in the world, and I'm wondering if they're trying to, or they could use genetics to create the perfect being,
Yes.
or Nimrod, or
Right.
someone
Or
else.
someone else. And that's, I mean, here's the thing is that what we're talking about here is, in a very real sense, science is going to be the foundation of this new religion. So science is going to be heavily used to put forth their message and their theology. So everything will be able to be explained. You think about all the natural disasters that are going to happen through the 7 seals. That's not going to be, guys aren't going to get on TV. Dr. Fauci's not going to get on TV and go, this was an act of God. He's not going to do it. Scientists won't do that. They will come up with another explanation for why these things are happening.
And this is after the rapture, folks.
If you're a pre-tribber, yes. All this stuff is
Will
happening
we
now.
recognize if we're not?
Right.
I don't know what I am. Dead. Hopefully dead.
Yes.
Will recognize or not recognize the Antichrist?
I would say if you're a true believer, you'll recognize the Antichrist. You will. I mean, you'll be.
I'm hoping I'm dead.
Well, I tend to go with, and again, I mean, you can find arguments on both sides of it, and they're both very convincing. You really have to almost line them up to try and. But I kind of like what Tom Bradford said is that after the 4th seal is when we're raptured, because that's when the wrath starts, the wrath of God. So my short answer to that is no, we won't be there. We won't be there. But there will be believers there that will be going through this time.
But they were believers after.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. True believers out there.
With all the intimidation and deception, this is going to kill me. We worship here. This is.
Well,
I
and
mean, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, and in some sense, it's very much like what the Jews had to do during the time when they were under Roman control. They didn't have to go and worship the emperor, but they went to the temple and they had to drop incense in the fire and swear their allegiance to Caesar. They didn't have to go to his throne to show that they worshiped him. They just had to go and do this act. And so that was the question, like, well, I didn't do this. It doesn't mean anything. Well, does it mean anything or does it not mean anything?
Well, they've just confused the whole situation. So
Right. And that's what I'm saying is that it could be something as simple as that, not someone standing over you with a pistol at your head going, are you going to worship or not? It could be something as simple as saying, well, you just need to go here and sprinkle some incense.
Well, you know how it is today. I mean, take Facebook. Somebody put something on Facebook. Everybody's like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Blah, blah, blah. This happened. This guy was pumping 500 gallons of gas in the back of the pickup truck. Never happened.
Yeah.
So it's just,
Yeah.
at least not in this case.
Yeah. Of course, at that point, who knows where the United States is?
What I'm saying is people believe.
Right.
It's global.
Right. Well, and why is that? It's because they want a religion of man, not a religion of God. And so if they have a religion that makes them feel good and allows everything that they do, that's why Greek mythology was so widely accepted, was because it gave people license to act like the gods. If the gods are sleeping around and having babies with other people while their wives are, then I can do the same thing. If it's okay for the gods, it's okay for me. So yeah, I mean, you're going to see that kind of thing where they're going to go to this because it does allow them that freedom to do what they want to do and still be religious. Okay. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a mid-trib guy, and that's why we keep seeing these 40 in 2 months and 40 in 2 months, and 7 years is split in half, and there's a major event in the middle. But what I was going to say was, it's my understanding that hardcore Jews that are not Christian Jews, they don't believe Christ was the Messiah, so
Right.
they're looking for the Messiah.
Right.
So they'll be fooled that this guy is the Messiah. we already know he's not, because we're gonna understand how this unfolds, and I think Greg's got this pretty close. I agree with 99% of this, and I think it's mid-trib, and I've got something to add to what Greg's done at the end of the class. God showed me something, and it's just, it still gives me goosebumps when I think about it, but I'm a mid-trib believer, and I think the other thing was the 10 toes and the image of Daniel.
Mhm.
I think those are 10 terrorist organizations like Hamas and Al-Qaeda and so on, because there is a verse that says that they had power but no dominion. Like I
Right.
said, there's a couple of different ways we can
Right.
look at this, but I think
Right.
we're pretty much
Right.
spot on there.
Right. Well, again, I would assume that those quotes that you're talking about are in the Old Testament, right?
It's either Ezekiel or Isaiah,
Right.
and it does refer to the Antichrist as the Assyrian.
Assyrian, yes, that's
Yeah.
another term that comes up.
Right.
That a lot of times people forget. But again, and that's why I think you have to look at where where a person is getting their information from. All they're doing is looking at the New Testament, then they're only getting a third of the story. There's plenty of information. I mean, you're talking about Psalms and Ezekiel and Daniel. I mean, it's all over the place in the Old Testament. If you're not reading the Old Testament, you're not going to understand what this stuff means. And I think a lot of times people misinterpret it, right? Misinterpret it because all they do is look at the New Testament and use quotes from the New Testament. So anytime I see that, I automatically go, okay, they're not serious about it because they're just finding verses to back up what they say. Okay, thanks, Paul. And it was okay, so he gave breath to him, he comes back and people worship him, okay? Verse 16, what time is it?
10:20.
Wow. And he causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the free and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads. And he decrees that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of the beast. The number of his name. And for some reason, I always miss that. You can either get the number or his name, one of the two. It doesn't have to be just the number. Okay? So, what's going to happen is that right now we have a situation where we have the haves and the have-nots. You know, Trent's been preaching about the haves and the have-nots. And in our world today, we have the haves and the have-nots. You know, those that are wealthy function pretty much under their own guidelines, their own set of rules. You got enough money, you can buy yourself out of anything. We probably would be shocked to find out what some people have bought themselves, what kind of trouble they've bought themselves out of. But we do have a distinction. If you and I committed a crime, we would go to jail for it. If I'm an elite person in the United States, a wealthy person with a lot of power, I commit that same crime, nothing happens to them. That's not going to be the case here. Under this government, everyone will have to function under the same rules. Everyone will have the same requirements. And it says it causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the free and the slaves, to be given a mark. So you can't buy your way out of the mark. There's only one way you can buy yourself out of the mark, and that's say, I'm not going to worship the Antichrist. That's it. And so I can see that this becomes a kind of a PC thing. And we will start seeing ads on TV, public service announcements. Don't go it alone. Take your 12-year-old and get their mark today. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw ads like that on TV. You know? So,
Didn't you say that once you get the mark?
I'm not
yes.
seeing that.
The downside of that is once you get the mark, you're done.
I'm not seeing
There's
that.
no
I'm
second
already
chance.
dead, remember?
Yeah. That there is no going back once you get the mark, because you have identified yourself with Satan. Bert?
But isn't it also, maybe in the next verse or something, basically an angel is going around to the world saying, don't take this mark. If you take this mark, this is it. You're done. Isn't that in there?
I think that comes later, because I know that it's verbalized that if you take the mark, then you're done. There's no going back.
Yeah, but I mean, it's an
Not,
actual.
it's not in here, not in chapter 13.
Okay, but there's an angel, basically, people don't have an excuse, say, well, I signed up for this mark because, I get all these benefits and things. but it's gonna be pretty cut and dry.
Right, right.
There's no excuse.
No.
People.
No, that's why there's no second chance after you do that, okay? And he decrees that no one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark. Now, obviously, you know there's gonna be people in the world that this will not impact. There are people who are so small in their numbers and that they've bartered. They don't, you know, there are parts of the world that still use bartering. They don't have cash. So it's not gonna be an issue. But for the 99.9% of the rest of us, this is gonna be a very impactful situation. So we've got this unholy trinity that's impacting every aspect of our lives. Our government, our religion, our economy, and there's not gonna be any way to get away from it. You're gonna have to either push back or give in, all right? So what will this mark look like? Is this the mark? Will it be a barcode on your face, on your head? That would be interesting. How about this? That would be painful, wouldn't it? Yeah. Okay, we don't know. It could very well be an implanted chip. You know, when you get a shot or something. I'm not.
Thanks.
Sorry. I mean, there were people who believed that was what was going on with the COVID shot. And, but there's ways they can get those chips in there. They use them for, you can get them for your dogs, your pets, so you know where they are. So you require people to do that. And it can be implanted in here. I saw one that showed like it was like a little USB port. And they plug in this USB thing and they get all this information about it. It's just like, that seems kind of odd. But at any rate, there's plenty of ways now, you know, as we've moved along in history, we've gone from having the number written across your forehead or on your hand to, then I remember when barcodes, I worked for a publishing company, when barcodes were first coming out. And it was like, oh my gosh, here's the mark of the beast right here. We're all gonna be scanned by these barcodes. And then the QR codes came out, and now we've got implants and all that kind of stuff. There was one interesting viewpoint on this was that it's not a physical mark at all. It's a belief system that you buy into the belief, and that's the mark. Now, I'm sure it's all part of it, but there's going to be a way that they can track us if they want to track us. And we see a move. One of the things that they have to do is get rid of cash, right? Okay. How many of you carry coins around your pocket anymore? Okay. My dad, I told you this before, my dad had enough change in his pocket to make change for anything.
And to drive you nuts by jail.
Yes, and he would do that in church or drive my mom nuts. He'd get his hand in there and jangle it around. But he knew exactly, he was an accountant, so he knew exactly how many nickels, how many dimes, how many pennies, how many quarters you need to have. I don't carry change around at all anymore. And most people don't carry cash. It's all debit cards. Well, you know, they're tracking everything you're doing with that debit card. Yes, Bert?
Yeah, a very interesting thing I heard about this with the mark that I didn't consider before. Okay, where's the mark going? It's on
Right
the head,
hand or the forehead?
right hand or the forehead. And we're talking about we're talking about a world religion rising up for that. Islam, if Islam becomes the predominant religion of this world, you know, that's the framework they're using. Okay, say most people would get this mark on their forehead. If Islam is the predominant thing, they go back to it, women would have their heads covered. So they would need an alternative, the right hand. Yeah, I mean, that's just something that
And
would make you think.
And we talk about Islam. I was watching a guy named his name's Heisinger. He was doing a study on the Revelation. He said that after 9/11, the number of people, Americans that convert to Islam every year has risen to 100,000 every year. They're Americans. And before that, it was like very minor amounts. I mean, it was really small, insignificant numbers. The other thing is, and we'll talk about this in a second, was about what you were saying. Okay, maybe it'll come to me as I'm going through it.
One note on that scanning, that the technology now will go right through fabric. The chips they have now, they can scan right through. If she had a headdress on or some kind of covering on, it would scan right through it.
Yeah, but if this is going to be a thing to spot
Well-
people that don't subscribe to that, you would want something that you could see with the naked eye, like a policeman trying to round up Christians or something.
Yeah, and I mean, I think having it on the right hand does make it, I think the other thing is that most people are right-handed, that's the hand of power and strength. So, yeah,
Traditionally, the left hand was not the hand to use.
no, they use that for something else.
Yeah.
So, what am I looking at time-wise, is it 10:30?
It's 10:30 now.
Okay, well, we'll just pick up on the 666 next week. I don't wanna take, cause it'll take some
Can I
time.
add something?
Yes, yes.
You know a little bit about the barcodes, and what I've seen is the barcode, and I've got some 1988 papers I put together here. I tore off the bottom of a payroll check, and at the bottom left corner of a payroll check, there's little like futuristic numbers. Remember when they put it in the bank, it goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? Okay, those little numbers in the bottom. It's not on your personal check, but it looks real similar. But there's little symbols that separate routing numbers and account numbers, and those symbols
Yes.
look almost exactly like the right-hand 6 in the UPC barcode. The other thing about that little number on the bottom of your payroll check is it's written in magnetic media. That's how it's getting read at the bank, it's magnetic media. That's the same magnetic media that's on the back of your credit card, that little black strip. So 666 is a clue that it's in our scanning system. It's the format our whole scanning system is written on. The 6s just separate account numbers and routing numbers. There's nothing to be scared about that number, it's not superstitious or anything like that. It's just a clue God gave us on where to look. It's in our scanning system, it's built into it.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, there's, yeah.
So you're saying basically if we don't have the mark, then we don't have an account, and we don't have a way of transferring funds.
I'll go ahead and share you what God showed
Go
me in
ahead.
September in the middle of the night. So but I have to give you a little bit of background to make some sense. I was growing up in a Christian home. My dad taught Sunday school. He loved to study prophecy like Greg does, and he had this stuff like this. As a little boy growing up, I tried to imagine what the rapture would look like. And now I'm a mid-trip guy trying to put pieces together and stuff, and I have all these dots that I need to connect. I can't connect them. How does it look? And I thought if the rapture happens, there's a lot of my friends are left behind. What are they gonna think? And I used to think our bodies went up in the rapture, but then God showed me, no, this body's not perfect. It's just the shell. My soul is lifted up to heaven. My body's gonna fall to the ground. So with that understanding, I look at when the rapture happens, maybe 10% of the public here falls like they're dead. They've just gone to heaven. Remember, he comes like a thief in the night. We don't see him, right? What's the everybody left behind thing? All these people just drop to the ground like they're dead. You're gonna hear sirens going off and everything, right? So what God showed me was it's gonna be I'm just going blank. I get excited thinking about it. We used to think it was like a MasterCard or something like this. You could not buy or sell without the mark. And what it is if you don't have the vaccination proof, you're not gonna be able to do commerce. You're not gonna be able to do business. It is tied into finances.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna be able to do anything without your vaccination passport. I don't think this current vaccination passport is it. It happens mid-trib. It's coming. We're at the preliminary steps, and we're real close. And what God was showing me was Christ comes during the vaccination era, which doesn't mean this year or next year. It could be a 40-year era. It could be years away. But it happens in the vaccination era. I mean, there's more to it, but we'll add that next week.
Well, I think the science has proven that if they introduce this idea on a very minuscule scale, they've already got it
Oh, yeah.
blown out.
Yeah.
They just haven't introduced
The
it yet.
technology's
So,
been there for years.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I think it's